Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Tonight, the Ministry of Defence is having to defend proposals that go right to the heart of how our country can defend itself. Newsnight's learned that the Royal Navy would lose its ability to assault enemy-held beaches under plans currently being considered. The specialist landing ships HMS Albion and Bulwark would be taken out of service, a plan which has caused huge alarm amongst senior Royal Marine officers who believe it would deprive the Corps of its core mission. Well, our defence editor Mark Urban has the story and he's with me now. Mark.
Emily, look, we're in a situation not unprecedented where there are too many things in the programme, too many aspirations to be paid for, but there's also this depreciation in the value of sterling which affects some of the really big projects, and there's got to be a review. Now, I have to tell you, in 30 years of reporting defence in this country, I've never seen a situation like the one we're now in. We're not allowed to call it a review, and Whitehall isn't, because apparently the Defence Secretary had one just 2 years ago and doesn't like the optics of calling this a review. We're not supposed to call what's now being considered cuts, but adjustments, according to the Chief of the Defence Staff. But sure enough, lots of cuts are now being considered, and we're getting to the crunchy phase of this, and the leaks are starting. Now, a lot of this is the usual sort of equal misery salami slicing type of stuff. So the Army, the Times reported yesterday, could lose a quarter of its helicopters. The Navy's also, I hear from that paper, going to lose some of its helicopters as well, slowing down F-35 deliveries, all the normal sort of stuff. But every now and then in one of these exercises, you get a great big thump when an entire capability, an entire sort of national skill set, or complete with the equipment and the people who use it, is going to be taken out. And that's what's now being seriously considered, according to people that I've spoken to in Whitehall. Fighting over the beach, from Normandy, the largest amphibious operation in history, to the go-it-alone national effort of the Falklands, to the multinational operation against Iraq in 2003. The technology may have changed, but the Royal Navy has always considered it a core capability. But under plans to balance the books, Britain would lose the specialist ships needed to do that.
There are lots of times around the world where actually if you want to put military forces on the ground, the way to do it is from the sea. You can't fly them in because there won't be airfields ready, no one will let you land, you'll get no overflying rights. And if we want a stable and secure world, what the Navy is very good at doing is ensuring that stability.
It's only 20 years since the UK decided to boost its amphibious assault fleet, acquiring the helicopter carrier Ocean, currently providing disaster relief in the Caribbean, and two big specialist landing ships, Albion and Bulwark. The retirement of Ocean has already been announced, and now the disposal of the other two is on the cards. We understand that the First Sea Lord, or head of the Navy, as part of planned economies, has suggested retiring Albion and Bulwark, reducing the strength of the Royal Marines by 1,000 and taking two ageing mine-hunting vessels out of service. This is about money. Defence reviews always are, of course, but it's also about people. The Royal Navy has a serious shortage of sailors, and as it tries to crew up its two new aircraft carriers, the Queen Elizabeth and Princess of Wales, axing the amphibious fleet could yield up hundreds for that purpose. The cuts fall particularly heavily for the Royal Marines, for whom landing ashore against opposition is core business.
It would really undermine the Corps' utility, but the reality is if we want to be a global Britain where we meet alliances and commitments that we have, we need a Royal Marines with amphibious capability so that we can deploy overseas.
Bringing the two new carriers into service is causing particular strains for the fleet, but with so much invested in them, other capabilities will have to give. Many defence insiders blame the huge costs of the carrier programme for distorting the shape of the Royal Navy as a whole. One senior Royal Marine told me it was the worst procurement decision of the past 50 years, and now the Royal Marines are going to be sacrificed for it. All three of the armed forces will suffer what one service chief this week called adjustments under the current capability review. That's likely to mean a slowdown in ordering of new RAF F-35 fighters and dozens of helicopters lost to the Army. But it's the Navy that's under particular pressure, and the responsibility of its head, the First Sea Lord, to look for possible cuts.
The First Sea Lord is put in a very, very difficult position. Basically, there is insufficient money for the Defence Force that has been planned. And First Sea Lord is told, this is how much money you've got, what are your priorities, and because there isn't sufficient funding there, because effectively the Defence Secretary said, oh, we'll find all the money we need by efficiency savings, and that can't be done, it means there have to be cuts.
3 Commando Brigade last mounted an amphibious assault 14 years ago against the Iraqis, and tonight many in Whitehall are asking, if the specialist ships go, then what kind of future will the Royal Marines themselves have?
Well, Mark Urban there with that exclusive story. We approached the Ministry of Defence for comment, and they told us that no decisions have yet been made, and at this stage any discussion of the options is pure speculation. Joining us now, though, Chris Parry, who helped author a previous defence review and commanded the UK's amphibious task group. Very nice of you to come in, Chris Parry. This is just a proposal at the moment. What do you understand from this? What would be your understanding of the effect it would have?
Well, I think it will be justified by saying that the aircraft carriers will take over part of the amphibious or littoral capabilities that these amphibious ships actually previously gave. I think it's easy to get sucked into the idea of the beach. I think in future warfare won't be seeing us going in over the beach. Marines will be taken directly where they're needed, for example by helicopter or other forms of vehicle. And I think the Ministry of Defence will justify it on the basis that actually beaches are not part of the equation anymore. However, these ships have a massive capability beyond just amphibious. Sitting right now, for example, off a disaster-hit island in the Caribbean, they'd be immensely useful for taking stuff in volume and mass across the beach to help people. They have immense command and control facilities with communications and things like that. They're an integral part of an amphibious force. And what we're effectively saying is we're going to centre our amphibious force in future on aviation from the carriers, and the sort of warfare we're going to do is going to involve light assault rather than heavy assault from the sea. But
are these involved now in the Caribbean in the ways that you talk about? Because it sounded from what Mark was saying as if they hadn't been used for 14 years.
No, they haven't, and they would have been ideal ships to do so, but because of current cuts, they're not available, they're not ready to be deployed. And I'm afraid to say that quite a lot of the Navy today is going through the motions. The real role of the Navy is to defend the United Kingdom, to promote its interests, to deter threats, and also to resist coercion. And the more we reduce the war-fighting capability of essentially a service that is designed to fight the Queen's enemies, then I'm afraid to say the Navy will be able to do less and less around the world in promoting and protecting the UK's interests.
So what state do you think the Royal Marines are in now?
I think the Royal Marines are being downscaled in the same way the Royal Navy is. And I think until you reduce the number of tasks that the Royal Navy is required to do at the same time as preparing for possible war at the top end, you're going to see gaps increasingly appearing not only in the Royal Marines but across the whole range of Royal Navy activities. The fact of life is that strategy depends on a triad of what the government or the people want to do, what resources are available, and what is militarily practicable. What is driving that strategy at the moment is the money available. It's as simple as that. And military practicality and the tasks that need doing are going by the wayside.
But isn't the truth, though, as Mark laid out, there are fiscal constraints, clearly, and actually most people think of modern warfare as being very differently fought. Isn't this just about adapting to the times?
Well, that's what the government would like you to think, that actually you have to go through the motions, you have to do cyber, you have to do all this soft stuff. The fact of life is our potential opponents in the world are building up their navies with hard-edge fighting capability. And the Americans right now are saying, look, you can do all this other stuff around the edges, but right now we need hard-edge fighting capability. And we need a Navy today that is able to go in harm's way and go toe-to-toe with any potential opponent. We don't have that Navy today.
Were the aircraft carriers a mistake?
No, the aircraft carriers will fulfill a role, and I see them as floating chunks of sovereignty that are versatile. You can put strike aircraft into them, you can do all sorts of things with them. They'll be great when they come in. If they can take over the amphibious effect that we previously had with Albion and Bulwark, then that's fine, but it's a hell of a gamble.
Chris Barry, thank you very much indeed.